The metal food tray clattered against the concrete floor with a harsh echo that sliced through the bustling noise of Fort Bragg's main canteen. Ashley Rivera, 25 years old and drowning in a worn U.S. Army uniform that hung loosely on her small frame, hit the ground hard. Blood immediately began trickling from her split lip as her knee struck the cold cement. "Get up, wannabe!" Marine Sergeant Blake Thompson towered over her, his massive fists clenched tight enough to make his knuckles white. Around them, hundreds of soldiers eating their lunch turned to watch the spectacle unfolding. The canteen, which moments ago had been filled with casual conversation and the clinking of utensils, fell into an uncomfortable silence. Ashley slowly reached for her beret that had fallen beside her, her movements careful and deliberate. She didn't speak, didn't protest, just wiped the blood from her mouth with the frayed sleeve of her old uniform. "Look at this," Blake laughed, turning to his group of Marine buddies, who had gathered behind him like a pack of wolves sensing weakness. "This one wearing clothes she probably pulled from a dumpster, and she dares to sit at the same table as real combat soldiers." The silence in the canteen grew heavier, more oppressive. At the VIP table in the far corner, 5 generals who had been discussing training protocols over lunch looked up with furrowed brows. General Connor Hayes, a decorated veteran with 30 years of service, set down his coffee cup slowly, his sharp eyes tracking every movement in the confrontation. Ashley still said nothing. She simply continued dabbing at the blood on her lip, her green eyes focused on the floor rather than meeting the gaze of her aggressor. Her silence seemed to infuriate Blake even more. "I'm talking to you!" Blake stepped forward and grabbed her collar, yanking her to her feet, with enough force that the fabric tore with an audible rip. In that moment, as fluorescent light hit the exposed skin of her arm through the torn fabric, everything began to change. But in the next 20 minutes, this canteen would witness one of the most shocking reversals in United States military history. Blake released Ashley's collar with a shove, sending her stumbling backward into an empty chair. She caught herself with a fluid motion that seemed almost too practiced, too controlled for someone who appeared so helpless. Private First Class Liam Carter, barely 19 and fresh out of basic training, watched from a nearby table with growing discomfort. Something about the way she moved didn't match her apparent vulnerability. "You know what your problem is?" Blake continued, his voice carrying across the entire canteen. He was performing now, playing to his audience of fellow Marines. "People like you think wearing the uniform makes you a soldier, but you're just playing dress-up, taking up space that belongs to real warriors." Ashley straightened her torn collar with steady hands. When she finally looked up, her expression remained completely neutral, almost unnaturally calm given the circumstances. She reached for a napkin from the overturned tray and began folding it with precise, methodical movements. The action was so unexpected that Blake actually paused mid-taunt to watch her. The napkin folding continued in silence, corner to corner, then a series of intricate folds that transformed the simple paper into a compact, triangular shape. It was the kind of fold that Special Forces operators learned during advanced survival training, designed to conserve space and maintain order even in chaos. But Blake, for all his Marine training, didn't recognize it. General Ethan Morrison, sitting 3 tables away, did recognize it. He sat up straighter, his weathered face showing the first flicker of interest as he observed the young woman in the shabby uniform. He nudged General Connor Hayes beside him, but Connor was already watching intently. "What are you doing? Playing origami?" Marine Corporal Mason Wright, one of Blake's squad members, stepped forward with a sneer. Mason was smaller than Blake, but made up for it with an aggressive personality that had earned him a reputation as someone who enjoyed confrontation. "Maybe she thinks if she folds enough napkins, we'll mistake her for someone who matters." Ashley placed the folded napkin carefully beside her overturned tray and began gathering the scattered food items with the same methodical precision. A bruised apple rolled toward Blake's boot, and he kicked it away with unnecessary force. It bounced across the floor and came to rest against the wall 20 feet away. Navy Lieutenant Iris Campbell approached from the officers' section, her crisp whites a stark contrast to Ashley's faded fatigues. Iris carried herself with the kind of rigid authority that came from being one of the few women to achieve her rank in a male-dominated environment. She had learned to be harder than the men around her, less forgiving, less willing to show any weakness. "This soldier," Iris said, emphasizing the word with clear disdain, was sitting at a table designated for officers. When I asked for her authorization, she couldn't provide any. Just sat there like she owned the place. Ashley's hand paused for a fraction of a second as she picked up a plastic fork. It was bent now, twisted from the impact with the floor, but she placed it carefully on the tray anyway. Her economy of movement, the way she positioned her body to maintain awareness of everyone around her, these were subtle things that most people in the canteen missed. But the generals at the VIP table didn't miss them. If you are watching this story unfold and feeling that surge of anger at injustice, you're not alone. Thousands of viewers are discovering these hidden stories of military honor that mainstream media never shows. Hit that subscribe button right now and join our community of patriots who believe every soldier's story deserves to be heard. Don't let these tales of valor fade into silence. Blake seemed energized by Iris's support. He grabbed an empty chair and slammed it down directly in front of Ashley, sitting backwards on it so he could lean forward into her personal space. The intimidation tactic was textbook, designed to make her feel trapped and small. "Let me explain something to you," Blake said, his voice dropping to a mock conversational tone that somehow felt more threatening than his shouting. "There's a hierarchy in the military. At the top, you've got your special operators, your SEALs, your Force Recon Marines. Then you've got your regular combat troops, the ones who actually see action. Below that, way below that, you've got your support staff. And then, somewhere in the basement, below even the cooks and the mechanics, that's where we find people like you." Ashley continued cleaning up the spilled food, her movements unhurried. When she reached for a scattered orange, Blake slapped his hand down on it first, crushing it beneath his palm. Juice spurted across the table and onto Ashley's already stained uniform. "Oops," Blake said with false innocence. "Looks like your uniform got even worse. Although honestly, I don't know how anyone could tell the difference." Staff Sergeant Ryan Foster joined the growing circle of antagonists. Ryan was known throughout Fort Bragg as someone who prided himself on his hand-to-hand combat skills, having won multiple base boxing championships. He cracked his knuckles as he approached, the sound sharp in the tense atmosphere. "You know what I think?" Ryan said, his Boston accent thick with contempt. "I think we've got a stolen valor situation here. This uniform looks like something bought from an army surplus store. Hell, I bet if we checked, those patches aren't even regulation." He reached out to grab one of the unit patches on Ashley's shoulder, but she shifted slightly, just enough that his hand missed. It looked accidental, like she had simply been adjusting her position, but the movement was too precise, too perfectly timed. "Did you just pull away from me?" Ryan's face flushed with anger. "Now you're being disrespectful on top of everything else?" Ashley finally stood up, her tray now holding the salvageable remnants of her lunch. She stood maybe 5 feet 4 inches, having to look up at all of them. Her voice, when she finally spoke, was quiet but clear. "I'd like to finish my lunch," she said simply. "If you'll excuse me." Blake stood up so fast his chair scraped loudly against the floor. "You don't get excused until I say you're excused. Who's your commanding officer? What unit are you with?" Ashley moved a step around him, but he sidestepped to block her path. When she tried to go the other way, he blocked her again. It was a childish game, but with serious undertones of physical threat. "Answer the question," Blake demanded. "What unit are you with?" "I'm currently unassigned," Ashley replied, her tone revealing nothing. Unassigned? Captain Oliver Hayes, no relation to General Connor Hayes, had been watching from his table and now stood to join the confrontation. As a captain, he outranked everyone in the group except the generals, and his presence added an official weight to the harassment. "That's convenient. So convenient that I think we need to verify your identity. Sergeant Thompson, check her ID." Blake's hand shot out to grab Ashley's arm, intending to search for her military identification. But the moment his fingers made contact, something shifted. Ashley's body moved in a way that seemed almost liquid, flowing around his grip while simultaneously causing him to overextend. Blake stumbled forward, his own momentum carrying him past her. To observers, it looked like he had simply been clumsy, but General Connor Hayes recognized the subtle application of momentum redirection, a technique taught in advanced close-quarters combat training. Blake caught himself against a table, his face reddening with embarrassment and anger. "You little—" Ashley's smartphone captured everything that day through its military-grade protective case. These specialized devices, designed for combat zones, feature encrypted storage, shock resistance, and 72-hour battery life. Many veterans rely on these ruggedized phones to stay connected in harsh environments while protecting sensitive information from unauthorized access. The atmosphere in the canteen had shifted from uncomfortable observation to active anticipation. Soldiers at nearby tables had stopped eating entirely, their food growing cold as they watched the confrontation escalate. Some had pulled out their phones, beginning to record what they sensed might become a significant incident. "Enough games," Blake said, his embarrassment transforming into rage. "You want to prove you belong here? Show us what you know about being a soldier." "Wright, give her your weapon." Mason Wright unholstered his M9 Beretta, dropping the magazine and clearing the chamber with practiced efficiency before setting it on the table. "Let's see if she even knows which end the bullet comes from." Ashley looked at the weapon for a long moment, then at the circle of faces around her. The smart choice would be to refuse, to walk away and report the incident through proper channels. But something in her expression suggested she had already tried the proper channels before, perhaps many times. She set down her tray and picked up the pistol. Her initial grip seemed awkward, almost clumsy, as if she was unfamiliar with the weapon. Blake and his friends exchanged smirks. "See? She doesn't even know how to—" Blake's words died in his throat. Ashley's hands suddenly moved with surgical precision. The pistol came apart in her grip, each component separated and laid out on the table in perfect order. Her fingers flew over the parts, checking each one with the kind of detailed inspection that came from years of experience. Then, just as quickly, she reassembled the weapon. The entire process took less than 7 seconds. The silence that followed was deafening. Ashley set the reassembled pistol back on the table, its barrel pointed safely away from everyone, the handling so textbook perfect that it looked like a training demonstration. That's just YouTube knowledge," Blake stammered, but his voice had lost its earlier confidence. "Anyone can learn to field strip a weapon from videos." "Really?" Ashley's voice remained level. "Then let's discuss the modifications made to the trigger assembly in the M9A3 version. Specifically the way the D-spring interacts with the hammer strut in cold weather conditions. Or would you prefer to talk about why the frame rail specifications were changed after the issues discovered in Kandahar?" The technical knowledge she displayed was far beyond what any casual enthusiast would possess. This was the kind of detailed understanding that came from extensive field experience, from having to maintain weapons in combat conditions where mechanical failure meant death. Iris Campbell, trying to regain control of the situation, stepped forward with a new challenge. "Weapons knowledge can be learned, but what about actual combat experience? You claim to be a soldier, but you look like you've never seen a day of real action. Tell us, what was the patrol pattern for convoy security in Sector 7 of Mosul? Anyone who's actually been there would know." Ashley's eyes flickered with something, perhaps memory, perhaps pain, but she answered without hesitation. "Sector 7 used a modified diamond formation, with the lead vehicle offset by 30 meters. Radio check-ins every 4 minutes on alternating frequencies. The biggest threat wasn't IEDs on the main route. It was sniper positions in the abandoned textile factory at grid reference." She paused. "I'm sorry, but that information is still classified." General Ethan Morrison set down his coffee cup with a soft clink that somehow carried across the canteen. He had been to Mosul. He knew Sector 7. And everything Ashley had just said was absolutely accurate, including the classification level of the grid references. Ryan Foster, perhaps sensing that the situation was shifting in an unexpected direction, decided to escalate to physical intimidation. "Talk is cheap. In the real military, we settle things differently." He assumed a boxing stance, his championships giving him confidence. "Come on, if you're really a soldier, you know how to handle yourself." Ashley took a step back, her hands remaining at her sides. "I'm not going to fight you." "Of course you're not," Ryan sneered. "Because you're all talk. Just another wannabe who—" He threw a quick jab, not really intending to connect, just to make her flinch. But Ashley didn't flinch. She moved, a subtle shift of her weight that caused Ryan's fist to pass harmlessly by her head. It looked like luck, but the generals recognized it as distance management, the ability to judge exactly how far an attack would reach and position oneself just beyond it. Ryan threw another punch, this one with more serious intent. Ashley's response was minimal but perfect, her body moving just enough to avoid contact while maintaining her balance and position. She wasn't fighting back, wasn't being aggressive, but she was demonstrating a level of defensive capability that contradicted everything about her appearance. "Stand still!" Ryan's frustration was evident as he threw a third punch. This time, Ashley's dodge caused her collar to shift, revealing a portion of her neck that had been hidden by the uniform. A scar ran from just below her ear down toward her shoulder, the distinctive pattern of shrapnel injury that veterans recognized immediately. General Connor Hayes was on his feet now, though he remained at his table. His eyes were fixed on that scar, on the way it branched into smaller marks that suggested multiple fragments from a close-range explosion. He had seen similar scars before, on operators who had survived IED attacks in Afghanistan and Iraq. This moment is about to change everything you thought you knew. If you're invested in Ashley's story, make sure to like this video and share it with someone who understands true sacrifice. Your support helps us bring more untold military stories to light. Blake, oblivious to the growing tension among the senior officers, decided to end what he saw as a pathetic display. He stepped forward and shoved Ashley hard with both hands. She stumbled backward, but rolled with the impact, her body moving in a way that minimized the force and kept her balanced. It was the kind of fall trained fighters learned, designed to prevent injury while maintaining readiness. Pathetic, Blake spat. You won't even defend yourself. What kind of soldier doesn't fight back? The kind who's killed enough people to know when violence is unnecessary, Ashley said quietly, but her words carried throughout the now silent canteen. The statement hung in the air like a challenge. Blake laughed, but it sounded forced. Killed people? You? What did you do? Bore them to death with regulations? Captain Oliver Hayes pulled out his phone, accessing the military personnel database. Let's settle this right now. What's your full name and service number? Ashley Rivera, Captain, service number 3247 Alpha 911. Oliver typed in the information, then frowned at his screen. There's no record of... Wait. His expression changed from smugness to confusion. This is coming up as classification required. It's asking for authorization codes I don't have. Must be a glitch, Blake said quickly, but uncertainty had crept into his voice. Or, she's using a fake number. General Mason Bradley, the youngest of the 5 generals at only 45, stood up from the VIP table and walked over to the group. His presence immediately changed the dynamic. Everyone except Ashley snapped to attention. At ease, the general said, his eyes fixed on Ashley. Captain Rivera, is it? Ashley nodded, but didn't salute. The lack of military courtesy should have been another mark against her, but there was something about the way she held herself, a stillness that suggested coiled readiness rather than disrespect. That's an interesting scar pattern on your neck, General Bradley observed. IED? Mosul, 2021, Ashley replied simply. I thought all our people were pulled out of Mosul by 2020, Iris interjected, her tone suggesting she had caught Ashley in a lie. General Bradley's expression remained neutral, but Connor Hayes noticed the way his jaw tightened slightly. They both knew that while official forces had been withdrawn, certain special operations units had remained for classified missions. Blake, growing desperate to maintain his position as the aggressor, made a crucial mistake. He reached out and grabbed Ashley's arm again, this time gripping hard enough to leave marks. I don't care what sob story you're trying to sell. You don't belong here. Ashley looked down at his hand on her arm, then up at his face. Please let go. Or what? Blake squeezed harder. What are you going to do about it? The sleeve of Ashley's uniform, already weakened from the previous tears, ripped further under the pressure. As it pulled away, more of her arm became visible. Scars crisscrossed the exposed skin, but more striking was the edge of a tattoo that had been hidden beneath the fabric. It appeared to be part of a skull design with unusual markings around it. General Henry Mitchell, the oldest of the 5 generals with silver hair and 35 years of service, suddenly went very still. He had seen that partial tattoo design before, in classified briefings about units that officially didn't exist. Sergeant Thompson, General Bradley said, his voice carrying clear authority. Release Captain Rivera immediately. Blake let go, but remained defiant. Sir, with all due respect, she's impersonating an officer. There's no way this woman is a captain. Mason Wright decided to support his friend's position. Sir, we've been stationed here for 2 years. We know every captain on base. She's not one of them. Oliver Hayes, still struggling with the database, suddenly looked up with alarm. The classification marker on her file, it's not just restricted. It's showing Spec at level 7. I've never even seen that designation before. To Spec at level 7 was a classification reserved for operations so sensitive that even their existence was denied. The kind of operations that involved units with names like Ghost, Phantom, and Shadow. Units that conducted missions in places the United States officially had never been. Ryan Foster, perhaps the most observant of the antagonists, noticed something else. The way Ashley stood had shifted slightly when Blake grabbed her. Her weight distribution, the angle of her feet, the position of her hands. She had moved into a combat stance so subtle that only someone with advanced training would recognize it. And in that moment, Ryan realized that if Ashley had chosen to respond to Blake's aggression, the Marine sergeant would already be on the ground. "What unit did you say you were with in Mosul?" General Connor Hayes asked, speaking for the first time since the confrontation began. Ashley hesitated, then answered carefully. "I didn't say, sir, but you were there in 2021? "Yes, sir." "During Operation Viper?" The name of the operation caused Ashley to go completely still. Several people noticed her hands clench slightly, the first real sign of emotion she had shown during the entire confrontation. "That operation is classified, sir," Ashley said quietly. Blake laughed harshly. "How convenient. Every time someone tries to verify your story, it's classified. You know what I think? I think you're a fraud who memorized some military terms and got some tattoos to look tough." He reached out to grab her collar again, intending to tear the uniform further to expose what he assumed would be fake military tattoos. It was an action that would change everything. The generals discussing Ashley's case mentioned the comprehensive disability insurance that saved her financially after her classified mission. Premium military insurance packages now cover PTSD treatment, career transition support, and lifetime medical care for combat-related injuries. These policies ensure warriors like Ashley receive proper care without bankruptcy. As Blake's hand closed on Ashley's collar, she moved. It wasn't aggressive, wasn't an attack, but rather a deflection that redirected his force. Blake's own momentum carried him forward and down, his grip on her collar causing the fabric to tear completely as he fell. The uniform shirt ripped from collar to waist, exposing Ashley's left shoulder and upper back. The canteen went absolutely silent. The tattoo was now fully visible. It wasn't just a skull, it was a specific design known only to those with the highest security clearances. A human skull wearing a crown of 7 stars, with the number 07 integrated into the design. Below it, in small but clear text, were the words that made several generals stand up simultaneously: Ghost Unit 7. But even more striking than the tattoo were the scars. They covered her back and shoulder in a pattern that told a story of violence survived. Bullet wounds, shrapnel scars, burn marks, each one positioned in a way that suggested she should not have survived the injuries that caused them. General Henry Mitchell spoke into the stunned silence, his voice carrying the weight of recognition and respect. "Holy Mother of..." "That's the Ghost 7 marking." Blake, still on his knees from his fall, looked up in confusion. "Ghost 7? What's that supposed to mean?" General Connor Hayes' response was immediate and dramatic. He stood at full attention and raised his hand in a perfect salute. One by one, the other 4 generals did the same. The sight of 5 general officers saluting someone who appeared to be a low-ranking soldier in a torn clothing sent shockwaves through the canteen. "Ghost Unit 7, General Mitchell said, his voice filled with awe. "The unit that didn't exist. The mission that never happened. The 413 Marines who came home because 7 operators went into hell to get them out." Blake's face had gone pale. He scrambled backward, still on the ground, trying to process what was happening. That's impossible. Ghost Unit was wiped out in Mosul. Everyone knows that." "Everyone knows the official story," General Bradley corrected. 7 operators went into a situation that 3 SEAL teams had deemed impossible. They were outnumbered 50 to 1, surrounded, cut off from air support. The extraction was supposed to be a recovery mission for bodies. Ashley stood perfectly still, her torn uniform hanging off her shoulder, the tattoo and scars exposed for everyone to see. She made no move to cover herself, showed no embarrassment at her exposure. She simply stood there, waiting. Iris Campbell's voice was barely a whisper. "You're supposed to be dead." The report said all 7 operators were killed in action. 6 were, Ashley said quietly. "I was the exception." The number on the tattoo suddenly made sense. Ghost 07, the 7th member of the unit, the only survivor. Private Liam Carter, who had been watching in stunned silence, suddenly spoke up. My brother was with the 413th Marine Regiment. He was one of the ones trapped in Mosul." Tears were streaming down his face. "He told me an angel came through fire to get them out, a soldier who kept fighting even after taking multiple hits. He said she was small, like she couldn't possibly be real, but she carried 2 wounded Marines on her back for 3 kilometers through enemy territory." Blake tried to speak, but only managed a strangled sound. He was still on the ground, looking up at Ashley with an expression of absolute horror at what he had done. The revelation coming next will leave you speechless. Before we continue, take a second to subscribe and ring that notification bell. You won't want to miss what happens when the generals realize who they're really looking at. Captain Oliver Hayes' phone began displaying more information, as his security clearance was overridden by someone with higher authority. His face went white as he read. Operation Viper, classified. Ghost Unit 7 deployed for emergency extraction of surrounded Marine forces. Mission duration, 73 hours. Enemy forces eliminated, 187 confirmed. Friendly casualties evacuated, 413. Ghost Unit casualties, 6 KIA, 1 WIA critical. He looked up at Ashley. You're listed as WIA critical. Wounded in action, critical condition. I got better, Ashley said with dry understatement. General Connor Hayes stepped forward, his salute still held. Captain Ashley Rivera, Ghost 07, I formally apologize for the treatment you've received in this facility. You are a genuine American hero who deserved better from the people you sacrificed everything to protect. The word captain rippled through the crowd. She wasn't a low-ranking soldier. She was an officer, and not just any officer, but one who had been part of one of the most elite units in American military history. Ryan Foster dropped his boxing stance, his hands falling limply to his sides. Oh my God, I challenged a ghost operator to a fight. I threw punches at someone who... He couldn't finish the sentence. Mason Wright was backing away, his face cycling through expressions of disbelief, fear, and shame. This isn't real. This can't be real. She looks like someone who doesn't want to be noticed, General Ethan Morrison finished. Like someone who's seen enough violence and wanted to disappear. Like someone who chose to wear old uniforms and eat alone because the alternative was dealing with the fame that comes from being the only survivor of a legendary mission. The entire canteen had risen to their feet, 400 soldiers standing at attention, saluting the small woman in the torn uniform who had just been revealed as one of the most decorated warriors in modern military history. Ashley finally moved, reaching down to help Blake to his feet. He flinched away from her hand as if it might burn him. Get up, Sergeant, she said, not unkindly. You didn't know. I assaulted you. I pushed you. Blake's voice broke. They'll court-martial me. I'll go to prison. No, Ashley said firmly. You won't, because I'm not pressing charges. You made assumptions based on appearance. It's a mistake. Learn from it. General Mason Bradley pulled out his phone and began making calls. I need a full security detail to the main canteen immediately. And get me a direct line to the Pentagon. Yes, the Pentagon. Tell them we've located Ghost 7. The mention of the Pentagon added another layer of gravity to the situation. This wasn't just a base-level incident anymore. This was national-level military significance. Iris Campbell had pulled up something on her phone, her face growing paler by the second. The Distinguished Service Cross citation. It's here, partially redacted, but for extraordinary heroism in connection with military operations against an armed enemy. Captain Rivera, despite suffering multiple gunshot wounds and extensive shrapnel injuries, continued to engage enemy forces while coordinating the evacuation of wounded Marines. Her actions, undertaken with complete disregard for her own safety, resulted in the successful extraction of an entire battalion that had been written off as lost. She looked up at Ashley with tears in her eyes. It says you were shot 7 times. 7 times and you kept fighting. Ashley's response was matter of fact. The Marines needed extraction. Personal injury was secondary to mission completion. General Henry Mitchell, the eldest of the generals, approached slowly. He reached into his pocket and pulled out something that made several people gasp, a Ghost Unit Challenge coin. These coins were so rare that most people in the military had never seen one. I served with Ghost 3 in Afghanistan, he said quietly, holding out the coin. He gave me this before his last mission, said if I ever met another ghost, I should show them this and they'd know I could be trusted. Ashley took the coin, examined it carefully, then nodded. Marcus Williams, Ghost 3. He was a good man. He saved my entire company in Kandahar, General Mitchell said, just like you saved those Marines in Mosul. The atmosphere in the canteen had shifted completely. What had begun as a bullying session had transformed into something resembling a religious experience. Soldiers were pulling out their phones, recording the historic moment. The hashtag Ghost7Returns would be trending within the hour. Blake Thompson remained on his knees, unable to stand, unable to process the magnitude of his mistake. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I couldn't have known. You looked weak," Ashley supplied. "Vulnerable, like an easy target." "That was the point, Sergeant. After Mosul, after the funerals, after the medal ceremonies, I just wanted to disappear, to be nobody, to eat lunch without people staring at me like I was some kind of hero or monster." General Connor Hayes finally lowered his salute, but his bearing remained formal, respectful. "Captain Rivera, with all due respect, you can't disappear. What you did, what Ghost Unit 7 accomplished, it's bigger than any individual preference for anonymity." Ashley stood perfectly still as the 5 generals maintained their salutes, her torn uniform hanging off her shoulder, the Ghost Unit tattoo and extensive scarring visible to everyone in the now silent canteen. The weight of 400 pairs of eyes felt heavier than any combat gear she'd ever carried. Blood still trickled slowly from her split lip, mixing with the salt of a single tear that escaped despite her iron control. General Connor Hayes was the first to lower his salute, but his bearing remained formal, almost reverent. "Captain Rivera, the report said all Ghost Unit 7 operators were killed in action. Your survival was never confirmed to operational command." "That was intentional, sir," Ashley replied, her voice steady despite the emotional weight of the moment. "After 18 months in medical recovery, I requested my files be sealed. I wanted to disappear." Blake Thompson remained on his knees where he had fallen, his face cycling through expressions of horror, disbelief, and crushing shame. His hands trembled as the magnitude of what he'd done, assaulting one of America's most decorated warriors, fully registered. Around him, his fellow Marines who had participated in the harassment were backing away, their earlier confidence evaporated like morning mist under a harsh sun. "Disappear?" General Ethan Morrison stepped forward, his weathered face etched with concern. "Captain, you're a national hero. Why would you want to—" "Because I'm not a hero," Ashley interrupted, her words cutting through the air with quiet intensity. "Heroes bring everyone home. I left 6 brothers in Mosul: Marcus Williams, David Chen, James Patterson, Robert Taylor, Michael Anderson, Christopher Lee." She recited each name like a prayer, or perhaps a penance. "They died creating the extraction route that saved 413 Marines. I survived. That's not heroism, General. That's failure." The raw honesty in her voice seemed to physically impact everyone present. Several combat veterans in the crowd nodded slowly, understanding the survivor's guilt that could eat at a warrior's soul more effectively than any physical wound. Private Liam Carter, who had been watching the entire confrontation with growing unease, suddenly gasped, "Oh my God, my brother was with the 413th Marines. He said an angel came through hell to get them out." Tears were streaming down his young face. "He said she was small, like she couldn't possibly be real, but she kept fighting even after taking multiple hits. He said she carried 2 wounded Marines on her back for 3 kilometers through enemy territory." Ashley's gaze found Liam in the crowd. "What was your brother's name?" "Staff Sergeant Michael Carter," Liam replied, his voice breaking. He died last year from complications related to his injuries, but he spent 3 years looking for you. He wanted to say thank you." For the first time since the confrontation began, Ashley's composure cracked completely. She moved toward Liam, and the crowd parted like water. When she reached him, she pulled the young private into an embrace that conveyed 3 years of buried grief and guilt. "Michael was a fighter," she whispered, though her words carried in the silent canteen. "He kept telling jokes, even when he was bleeding out. Made us laugh in the middle of hell. I'm sorry I couldn't save him from the complications." "You gave him 3 more years," Liam sobbed against her shoulder. 3 years to say goodbye to our family. That's everything." The moment was captured on dozens of phones, an image that would become iconic within hours, the legendary Ghost 7, tears streaming down her scarred face, comforting the brother of a man she'd saved while blood from Blake's assault still stained her uniform. Ashley's tactical knowledge came from advanced military education programs now available online. These accredited courses teach strategic planning, crisis management, and leadership skills valued at Fortune 500 companies. Veterans completing these programs report average salary increases of 40% within 2 years of graduation. Captain Oliver Hayes was still staring at his phone screen, scrolling through the declassified portions of Ashley's service record that his security clearance allowed him to access. The citations: Distinguished Service Cross, Silver Star, Bronze Star with Valor, Purple Heart with 7 oak leaf clusters. He looked up, his face pale. 7 Purple Hearts. You were wounded 7 separate times in Mosul? 8, technically, Ashley corrected, releasing Liam and wiping her tears. But one was friendly fire from a ricochet, so it didn't count officially. Ryan Foster, who had been frozen in place since the Ghost Unit revelation, finally found his voice. The operation report says you eliminated 187 enemy combatants during the 73-hour mission. That's impossible for one person. It wasn't one person, Ashley said quietly. It was Ghost Unit 7. Every kill I made was possible because my brothers created the opportunities. They died giving me clear shots, drawing fire so I could reposition, holding choke points so I could reload. Her voice grew even quieter. 187 enemy deaths, 6 American heroes dead. The math never balances. General Mason Bradley had pulled out his secure phone and was speaking rapidly to someone at the Pentagon. His face grew increasingly grave as he listened to whatever response he was receiving. When he ended the call, he approached Ashley with the kind of careful respect reserved for volatile ordnance. Captain Rivera, I have just been informed that your appearance here, the revelation of your identity, has triggered a Category 1 security situation. The Secretary of Defense is being briefed as we speak. Ashley nodded wearily. I understand, sir. I'll accept whatever consequences. Consequences? General Bradley interrupted. Captain, you misunderstand. The security situation isn't about discipline. It's about protection. Now that your survival is public knowledge, you've become a high-value target for every enemy of the United States who lost people in Mosul. As if to emphasize his point, several phones in the canteen began buzzing with news alerts. Someone held up their screen, showing a breaking news banner. Ghost 7 found alive. American hero discovered at Fort Bragg. How is this already on the news? Iris Campbell asked in bewilderment. The videos, someone called out. They've gone viral. 3 million views in the last 10 minutes. Ashley closed her eyes, her anonymity evaporating in real time. When she opened them, there was a resignation there, mixed with something else. A strange relief, perhaps, at no longer having to hide. Blake Thompson finally struggled to his feet, his legs shaky. He took a step toward Ashley, then stopped, apparently unable to find words adequate to the magnitude of his mistake. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. I assaulted you. I pushed you, mocked you, tried to humiliate you. His voice broke completely. I assaulted a genuine American hero because I thought you looked weak. No, Ashley corrected him, her tone surprisingly gentle. You assaulted someone you perceived as vulnerable because it made you feel powerful. The fact that I'm Ghost 7 doesn't make your actions worse. They were wrong regardless of who I am. The wisdom in her words struck deeper than any punishment could have. Blake fell to his knees again, but this time it was different, not from being thrown down, but from the crushing weight of genuine remorse. I'll turn myself in, he said. I'll accept whatever punishment. You'll do no such thing, Ashley interrupted. You'll learn from this. You'll remember this feeling the next time you see someone who looks like an easy target. You'll remember that everyone has a story you know nothing about. General Henry Mitchell had been studying Ashley with the intensity of someone trying to solve a complex puzzle. Captain Rivera, if I may ask, why the old, worn uniform? Why eat alone in a crowded canteen? Why maintain such a low profile? Ashley touched the torn fabric of her uniform, a gesture that seemed almost affectionate. After Mosul, after the funerals, after the medal ceremonies, I couldn't stand the way people looked at me, like I was some kind of hero or monster, sometimes both at once. I wanted to be nobody, just another face in the crowd. But you're not nobody, Iris Campbell protested, her earlier hostility completely transformed into something approaching awe. You're Ghost 7. You saved... I survived, Ashley cut her off. That's all. My brothers were the heroes. They died completing the mission. She trailed off, then whispered, I just lived with it. The main screen in the canteen, typically used for news broadcasts and training videos, suddenly flickered to life. A news anchor appeared with a breaking news banner that read, "Pentagon confirms Ghost 7 alive. Exclusive footage from Fort Bragg." The assembled soldiers watched in stunned silence as videos from the canteen, their canteen, from just minutes ago, played on national television. The image of Blake shoving Ashley, her controlled fall, the revelation of the Ghost Unit tattoo, the generals saluting, it was all there, broadcast to millions. "My God," Mason Wright muttered, "the whole world is watching this." General Connor Hayes took charge of the increasingly chaotic situation. "All right, everyone listen up. This canteen is now a secured area. No one leaves until we've processed this situation properly." He turned to Ashley. "Captain Rivera, we need to get you to a secure location immediately." "With respect, sir," Ashley replied. "I've been hiding for 3 years. I'm tired of running." She walked to the center of the canteen, where everyone could see her clearly. The torn uniform, the exposed scars, the Ghost Unit tattoo, she stood there without shame or pretense, owning every mark that told her story. "My name is Captain Ashley Rivera," she began, her voice carrying throughout the silent space. 3 years ago, I was part of Ghost Unit 7. We went into Mosul to extract 413 Marines who had been ambushed and surrounded. The mission parameters were simple: bring them home or die trying. She paused, looking around at the assembled faces, some she'd served with, some who'd just witnessed her humiliation, some who were seeing her for the first time. 6 of my brothers died completing that mission. For 3 years, I've carried their names, their faces, their last words. I've hidden from the world because I couldn't face being called a hero when I felt like a failure. Her gaze found Blake Thompson, still on his knees. "But Sergeant Thompson here taught me something today. Hiding doesn't change the past. It doesn't honor the dead. It just wastes the life they died to preserve." Blake's tears were flowing freely now, the weight of her forgiveness almost harder to bear than punishment would have been. "Every person in this uniform," Ashley continued, gesturing to the crowd, "has a story. Some are heroes, some are support staff, some are just trying to serve their country in whatever way they can. None of them deserve to be judged by their appearance or dismissed because they don't fit someone's idea of what a warrior looks like." The canteen erupted in applause, starting slowly but building to thunderous ovation. Soldiers were crying openly, some saluting, others simply standing in respect for the small woman who had endured so much. If Ashley's story moved you, 2 more incredible military stories are waiting on your screen right now. Click the video that appears and discover another warrior whose sacrifice was almost forgotten. Subscribe to ensure you never miss these powerful moments. General Mason Bradley's secure phone rang. His expression grew increasingly serious as he listened to whoever was on the other end. "Yes, sir, I understand. She's here." "Yes, sir, I'll put her on." He held out the phone to Ashley. "Captain Rivera, it's for you. It's the Secretary of Defense." Ashley took the phone, the entire canteen watching in tense silence. "Captain Rivera speaking. Yes, Mr. Secretary. I understand. No, sir, I haven't been compromised. The situation was unexpected but contained." As she listened, her expression shifted from professional attention to shock. "Sir? Could you repeat that? That's not possible." Everyone in the canteen held their breath, watching as Ashley's face cycled through emotions: disbelief, hope, fear, determination. "Yes, sir. I understand. I'll need verification codes." "Yes, sir." "Thank you, sir." She handed the phone back to General Bradley, her hands trembling, the first sign of real physical distress she'd shown since the confrontation began. "Captain Rivera?" General Connor Hayes asked with concern. "What is it?" Ashley looked around the room, visibly struggling to process whatever she'd just learned. When she spoke, her words changed everything once again. "That was confirmation of a classified intelligence report. They claim—" She paused, as if saying it out loud might make it less real. "They claim Ghost Unit 7 is still alive. All 6 of them. They're being held in Mongolia." The canteen exploded in shocked voices. The dead members of Ghost Unit 7, the heroes who had supposedly died in Mosul, were alive? "That's impossible," General Mitchell said immediately. "We had confirmation. Dog tags were recovered. There were bodies." "Staged," Ashley interrupted, her tactical mind already working through the implications. "According to the intelligence, it was all staged. They were captured, not killed. They've been held in a black site for 3 years. By who? General Morrison demanded. Why wouldn't they announce such a propaganda victory? Because they're not being held by our traditional enemies, Ashley said, her voice growing stronger as pieces fell into place. They're being held by someone who knew their value as leverage, someone who's been waiting for the right moment to use them. She pulled out a phone, not her regular one, but a device that several of the generals recognized as an encrypted military communication unit. It had been buzzing with an incoming message. Ashley read it, her face going pale. GPS coordinates, she said quietly. And a message, Ghost 7, your brothers are waiting. Come alone or they die. You have 72 hours. It's a trap, Blake said immediately, surprising everyone by speaking up from his position on the floor. Captain, they're using your brothers to lure you. I know, Ashley cut him off. I don't care. Captain Rivera, General Connor Hayes said firmly, you can't seriously be considering. I'm not considering anything, Ashley interrupted. I'm going. They would come for me. Every single one of them would walk into hell to bring me home. I won't do less for them. This needs to go through proper channels, General Bradley protested. We need to verify the intelligence, coordinate with special operations. Every hour we waste is another hour they suffer, Ashley said, her voice carrying the kind of command authority that made even generals pause. I've left them behind for 3 years, not another day. Blake Thompson suddenly stood, his face set with determination. Captain Rivera, I know I have no right to ask, but I want to help. Let me join the rescue mission. Ashley studied him for a long moment. Sergeant Thompson, you just physically assaulted a superior officer. You're facing potential court-martial and dishonorable discharge. I know, ma'am. You could spend years in military prison. I know, ma'am. So, why would you volunteer for a mission that might get you killed? Blake straightened at it to attention. Because, ma'am, I've spent my entire military career thinking strength was about dominance and intimidation. You've shown me it's about sacrifice and loyalty. If there's even a chance to help rescue American heroes, I need to be part of it. Not to redeem myself, but because it's the right thing to do. Ryan Foster stepped forward. I volunteer as well, Captain. So do I, Mason Wright added. And me, Iris Campbell said. One by one, throughout the canteen, soldiers began volunteering. Within moments, over 100 personnel had offered to join a rescue mission for men they'd never met, led by a woman they'd just watched being humiliated. Ashley looked around the room, and for the first time since the confrontation began, she smiled. Just slightly, but it transformed her face. 3 years ago, 7 of us went into hell to save 413 Marines. Today, it seems like 400 soldiers want to help me save 6. General Connor Hayes made a decision that would define the rest of his career. Captain Rivera, if this intelligence is legitimate, we can't wait for bureaucratic approval. He turned to the other generals. Gentlemen, I'm activating emergency protocols. We're going to verify this intelligence, and if it's real, we're bringing our boys home. The other generals nodded in agreement. General Mitchell pulled out his phone. I'll contact JSOC immediately. If Ghost Unit is alive... Sir, Ashley interrupted respectfully, with all due respect, official channels will take too long. They'll want confirmation, satellite imagery, diplomatic clearances. By the time we're authorized to act, my brothers could be moved or killed. Then what do you propose? General Bradley asked. Ashley's response was simple. Give me a team, minimal support, and plausible deniability. If this goes wrong, you can claim I went rogue. If it goes right, 6 American heroes come home. The generals exchanged glances. What she was proposing was completely outside regulations, potentially illegal, and definitely dangerous. It was also probably the only way to save Ghost Unit if they were really alive. A commotion at the canteen entrance drew everyone's attention. Military police had arrived, followed by what appeared to be half the base's senior staff and a growing crowd of media personnel who had somehow gotten through base security. The situation's about to become a circus, General Connor Hayes observed grimly. Ashley made a decision. Then let's give them something worth watching. She walked toward the entrance, and the crowd parted before her. At the doorway, she turned back to address the canteen one more time. Sergeant Thompson, you asked earlier what makes someone a real soldier. It's not about being tough or intimidating others. It's about being willing to sacrifice everything for the people counting on you. Today, you all showed me that spirit is still alive in the American military. She looked directly at Blake. You and your team have 6 hours to prepare. We leave tonight. Ma'am? Blake's confusion was evident. Leave for where? Mongolia, Ashley replied simply. We're bringing Ghost Unit home. The media outside pressed forward as Ashley emerged from the canteen, their cameras capturing every detail. The torn uniform, the blood on her lip, the Ghost Unit tattoo still partially visible through the ripped fabric. Captain Rivera, a reporter shouted. Is it true you're Ghost 7? Ashley stopped, looking directly into the nearest camera. My name is Captain Ashley Rivera. 3 years ago, I was part of a mission that supposedly cost the lives of 6 American heroes. Today, we've received intelligence suggesting those heroes might still be alive. The reporters erupted with questions, but Ashley continued speaking, her voice cutting through the chaos. For 3 years, I've hidden from who I was, from what I did. Today, Sergeant Blake Thompson reminded me that hiding doesn't change the past. It just prevents you from changing the future. Are you angry about how you were treated? Another reporter called out. Ashley glanced back at the canteen, where Blake and the others were visible through the windows, already preparing for the mission. No, she said simply. I'm grateful. Their actions, wrong as they were, led to this moment, to the possibility that my brothers are still alive. Sometimes the worst moments lead to the best outcomes. General Connor Hayes stepped forward, positioning himself beside Ashley in a clear show of support. Ladies and gentlemen, Captain Rivera is a genuine American hero who deserves our respect and support. The events in the canteen today, while regrettable, have led to a development of national importance. General, can you confirm the reports about Ghost Unit being alive? A reporter pressed. I can confirm that we've received intelligence requiring immediate verification. Captain Rivera will be leading that effort with the full support of the United States military. Ashley's encrypted phone buzzed again. Another message, this time with more detailed coordinates and a photo that made her gasp. It was grainy, clearly taken in low light, but unmistakable. 6 men in chains, wearing the remnants of U.S. military uniforms. And visible on the wall behind them, written in what appeared to be blood, was a message. 7 minus 1 equals 0. 7 plus 6 equals forever. It was their code, something only the 7 members of Ghost Unit would know. Her brothers were alive, and they were calling her home. Excuse me, Ashley said to the reporters, her voice thick with emotion. I have a mission to prepare for. She walked back into the base, followed by Blake Thompson and the volunteers who had committed to the rescue mission. The media continued shouting questions, but Ashley didn't look back. She had spent 3 years looking backward. Now, finally, she was looking forward. In the tactical briefing room, the volunteers gathered around Ashley as she spread out maps of Mongolia on the table. The coordinates placed Ghost Unit in one of the most remote regions of the country, an area known for harsh weather and minimal infrastructure. This won't be easy, Ashley said, addressing her impromptu team. We're looking at a halo jump insertion, 72 hours of movement through the hostile territory, and extraction under fire. Some of you might not come back. Not a single person left the room. Blake Thompson stepped forward. Captain, I know I have no right to ask for any position in this mission, but I want you to know I'll die before I let you down again. Ashley studied him for a long moment. Sergeant Thompson, I'm making you my second in command for this operation. The shock on Blake's face was almost comical. Ma'am, after what I did, you volunteered to die for men you've never met to make amends for actions you can't take back. That's the kind of dedication this mission needs. She turned to address the entire room. All of you witnessed my humiliation today. You saw me at my lowest point, and you chose to follow me anyway. That makes you exactly the team I need. Over the next 6 hours, Fort Bragg transformed into a hive of activity. Equipment was requisitioned, transport was arranged, and the volunteers were given crash courses in the specific skills they'd need for the mission. Throughout it all, Ashley remained focused, professional, and absolutely determined. General Connor Hayes pulled Ashley aside during a brief break in preparations. Captain, I need you to understand something. What you're attempting, it's beyond dangerous. It's nearly suicidal. I know, sir, if this intelligence is false, if this is a trap, then I'll die trying to save brothers who were already dead, Ashley replied. But if there's even a 1% chance they're alive, I have to try. The general nodded slowly. I've made some calls. Unofficially, you'll have satellite support and a quick reaction force stationed just outside Mongolian airspace. If things go sideways, Thank you, sir, Ashley interrupted. But if things go sideways, focus on getting the others out. I won't leave without Ghost Unit, one way or another. As the sun set over Fort Bragg, the rescue team assembled on the tarmac beside a C-130 transport aircraft. Ashley stood before them in full combat gear, the Ghost 7 call sign prominent on her tactical vest. Blake Thompson stood beside her, similarly equipped, his transformation from bully to brother complete. Listen up, Ashley addressed the team. In a few hours, we'll be over Mongolian airspace. We'll insert via halo jump at 30,000 feet. It'll be cold, dangerous, and completely insane. Anyone having second thoughts? No one moved. All right then, Ashley said, allowing herself a small smile. Let's bring our boys home. As they boarded the aircraft, Blake fell into step beside Ashley. Captain, can I ask you something? Go ahead, Sergeant. In the canteen, when I pushed you, when I tore your uniform, you could have killed me with your bare hands. Why didn't you fight back? Ashley paused at the aircraft door, considering her answer. Because, Sergeant, violence is easy. It's the first refuge of the incompetent and the last resort of the competent. I've killed 187 enemy combatants. I don't need to prove I'm dangerous. I needed to prove I'm disciplined. She climbed into the aircraft, then turned back to him. Besides, if I had fought back, you wouldn't be here. You wouldn't have volunteered. This mission wouldn't exist. Sometimes the greatest victories come from appearing to lose. Blake absorbed this lesson, understanding finally that true strength wasn't about domination, but about knowing when not to use your power. The aircraft engines roared to life, and the rescue team settled in for the long flight to Mongolia. Ashley pulled out the encrypted phone one more time, looking at the grainy photo of her brothers in chains. She typed a simple message to the coordinates she'd been given. Ghost 7 inbound. 6 brothers coming home. Death before dishonor. Honor before pride. Brothers before self. Ghost Unit forever. The response was immediate. We knew you'd come. We never doubted. See you soon, little sister. Ghost 1. Ashley smiled, tears running down her face. Around her, the team that had formed from an act of bullying prepared for what would become one of the most daring rescue missions in military history. 72 hours earlier, Blake Thompson had shoved a woman he thought was weak. Now he was following that same woman into hell, understanding finally that heroes don't always look like heroes, and sometimes the smallest person in the room carries the biggest heart. The aircraft climbed into the night sky, carrying with it the hopes of a nation and the determination of a woman who had transformed humiliation into heroism. But more than that, it carried the unbreakable bond of military brotherhood, the promise that no one gets left behind. As they flew toward Mongolia, Ashley's encrypted phone buzzed with one final message. This time, it was a video, just a few seconds long. It showed a man in chains, his face obscured by shadows, but his voice unmistakable to anyone who had served with Ghost Unit. 7, the voice said, using Ashley's call sign. When this is over, when we're home, there's something you need to know. Mosul wasn't what you think. We didn't die for the mission. We sacrificed ourselves for you, because Ghost Unit protects its own. Always. The video ended, leaving Ashley with more questions than answers. What had really happened in Mosul? Why had her brothers been taken instead of killed? And who had orchestrated this elaborate 3-year deception? The answers waited in Mongolia, in a remote facility where 6 American heroes had been held for 3 years, waiting for their sister to come home. And she was coming, backed by a team of volunteers who had learned in one afternoon what she had always known, that courage isn't the absence of fear, but action in spite of it, that strength isn't about size, but about spirit, and that sometimes the worst moments in our lives lead to our finest hours. Blake Thompson looked out the aircraft window at the darkness below, then at Ashley studying her maps with laser focus. 24 hours ago, he had been a bully who thought strength came from intimidating others. Now he was a soldier following a true warrior into danger, understanding finally that real strength came from lifting others up, not tearing them down. Captain, he said quietly, whatever happens in Mongolia, I want you to know, meeting you, even the way it happened, has changed my life. Ashley looked up from her maps. Sergeant, you changed your own life. You made a choice to be better than you were. That's all any of us can do. The aircraft flew on through the night, carrying them toward a confrontation 3 years in the making. In a few hours, they would jump from 30,000 feet into hostile territory, attempting something that military planners would call impossible. But impossible was just another word for something that hadn't been done yet. And Ashley Rivera, Ghost 7, had built her entire career on doing the impossible. The encrypted phone buzzed one last time. The message was simple. The clock is ticking. 71 hours remaining. Come alone or they die. Ashley looked around the aircraft at the dozens of soldiers who had volunteered to follow her. She wouldn't be alone. She'd never be alone again. Because that's what she'd learned in that canteen. That even in our darkest moments, when we feel most isolated and vulnerable, there are people ready to stand with us if we just give them the chance. The mission parameters were clear. Infiltrate a hostile facility, rescue 6 American heroes, and extract without starting an international incident. The odds of success were minimal. The probability of casualties was high. The chance that everyone would come home alive was essentially zero. But those were just numbers, and Ashley had learned long ago that numbers didn't account for the human spirit, for the bonds of brotherhood, for the power of redemption. They didn't account for soldiers like Blake Thompson, who could transform from antagonist to ally in the space of a single afternoon. They didn't account for the hundreds who had volunteered to risk everything for people they'd never met. Most importantly, the numbers didn't account for Ghost Unit 7's cardinal rule: never leave anyone behind. As the aircraft crossed into international airspace, Ashley stood and addressed her team one final time before the jump. In a few hours, we'll be on the ground in Mongolia. We'll be outnumbered, outgunned, and operating without official support. The smart money says we'll fail. The tactical assessment says this is suicide. She paused, looking at each face in turn. But 3 years ago, 7 operators went into Mosul facing the same odds. We were told it was impossible. We were told we'd all die. We went anyway because 413 Marines were counting on us. Her voice grew stronger. Today, 6 heroes are counting on us. 6 men who sacrificed everything for their country, who have endured 3 years of captivity, who never gave up hope that someone would come for them. She looked directly at Blake. Sergeant Thompson asked me earlier, what makes someone a real soldier? This is it. This moment, when everything says retreat but you advance, when logic says survive but you sacrifice, when fear says run but loyalty says fight. Blake stood at attention and saluted. Captain Rivera, Ghost 7, it's an honor to serve under your command. One by one, every soldier on the aircraft stood and saluted. The woman they had watched being bullied and humiliated just hours earlier had become their leader, their inspiration, their example of what military service truly meant. The honor, Ashley said, returning their salutes, is mine. The pilot's voice crackled over the intercom. 30 minutes to drop zone. Prepare for Halo operations. As the team began final preparations, checking equipment and reviewing mission parameters, Ashley touched the Ghost Unit tattoo through her tactical gear. 6 men had supposedly died to save her in Mosul. Now she would discover the truth about that day, about their sacrifice, about the 3 years of captivity they had endured. But more than that, she would bring them home. Because that's what Ghost Unit did. That's what real soldiers did. That's what family did. The aircraft cargo door opened, revealing the night sky 30,000 feet above Mongolia. The temperature was 50 below zero. The oxygen was too thin to breathe without equipment. The margin for error was non-existent. Ashley looked back at her team one last time. From Blake Thompson, the Marine who had shoved her to the ground, to Private Liam Carter, whose brother she'd saved in Mosul, to all the volunteers who had witnessed her humiliation and chosen to follow her anyway. Ghost Unit 7, she said into her radio, beginning descent. Then she jumped into the darkness, followed immediately by Blake and the others. They fell through the night sky like avenging angels, guided by the promise that no American warrior would be left behind. No sacrifice would be forgotten. No brother would be abandoned. Below them, in a facility that didn't officially exist, 6 men in chains heard the distant sound of aircraft engines. Marcus Williams, Ghost 1, looked up despite the blindfold covering his eyes. "She's coming," he whispered to his brothers. "7's coming home." "How do you know?" David Chen, Ghost 2, asked weakly after 3 years of captivity. "Because," Marcus replied with absolute certainty, "Ghost Unit never leaves anyone behind, and Ashley Rivera is the best of us all." The sound grew closer, and for the first time in 3 years, the 6 members of Ghost Unit allowed themselves to hope. Their little sister was coming, and hell was coming with her. The mission that had begun with a shove in a canteen would end with either the greatest rescue in military history or the most devastating loss. But either way, it would end with Ghost Unit 7 together again, proving that bonds forged in battle could survive anything, even death itself. As Ashley fell through the darkness, she thought about the journey that had brought her here, from hiding in shame to standing proud, from being bullied to being followed, from being alone to being surrounded by brothers and sisters in arms. The ground rushed up to meet them. Mongolia spread out below like a canvas of shadows and secrets. Somewhere down there, 6 heroes waited for rescue. Somewhere down there, the truth about Mosul waited to be discovered. Somewhere down there, redemption waited for everyone brave enough to seek it. Ashley deployed her parachute, the silk canopy snapping open in the cold night air. Around her, dozens of other parachutes blossomed like flowers of war. The rescue mission had begun. And back at Fort Bragg, in a canteen that had witnessed transformation and revelation, hundreds of soldiers gathered around screens, showing satellite feeds of the operation. They watched and prayed for the woman who had shown them that strength wasn't about size, courage wasn't about bravado, and sometimes the people we dismiss as weak are the strongest warriors we'll ever meet. The story that had begun with "Get Up Wannabe" would end one way or another in the next 70 hours. But the lessons learned, the bonds forged, and the truths revealed would last forever. Because that's what real military service was about. Not the glory or the medals or the recognition, but the willingness to transform your worst moments into your finest hours, to turn humiliation into heroism, and to prove that no one, absolutely no one, gets left behind. Ghost Unit 7 was coming home, all of them, together. The C-130 touched down at Dover Air Force Base at 0300 hours, 42 hours after the successful extraction from Mongolia. Ashley Rivera stood at the cargo door, watching her 6 brothers being transferred to medical vehicles under heavy security. The rescue mission had been flawless, too flawless. Something about the entire operation felt orchestrated, like they had been allowed to succeed. Blake Thompson approached from behind, his face bearing new scars from the Mongolia operation. "Captain, something's not right." The resistance we faced was minimal. For a facility holding Ghost Unit for 3 years, security was almost non-existent. Ashley nodded slowly. She'd been thinking the same thing. They wanted us to find them. But why? Before she could answer, a black SUV pulled up beside the aircraft. The door opened, revealing General Connor Hayes, but his expression was different from the supportive commander at Fort Bragg. This was the face of someone carrying secrets that were eating him alive. "Captain Rivera, Sergeant Thompson, please come with me. There's something you need to see." The ride was silent until they reached a building that didn't appear on any base map. Underground parking led to an elevator that descended far deeper than any normal structure would require. When the doors opened, Ashley found herself in a corridor lined with photographs, hundreds of them, dating back decades. "Every person on these walls was reported KIA," General Hayes said quietly. "Every single one." Ashley studied the faces, different wars, different eras, but all sharing a similar quality in their eyes. The look of elite operators who'd seen beyond conventional combat. At the end of the hall, a larger photograph made her freeze. It showed 7 soldiers in Vietnam-era gear, standing in formation. The woman in the center looked exactly like Ashley, down to the smallest detail. "That's Lieutenant Sarah Rivera," Hayes said, "your grandmother. The one your family was told died in a training accident in 1971. "That's impossible," Ashley whispered. "My grandmother was a nurse. She died before my mother was even born." "Your grandmother was the first Ghost 7, Hayes replied. "And she didn't die. She's been running an operation so classified that only 3 people in the entire government know it exists." They entered a vast underground chamber where dozens of personnel worked at monitoring stations. Every screen showed different locations around the world, but what caught Ashley's attention were the designation markers. Ghost Units 9 through 47, all listed as active. "How many Ghost Units are there?" Blake asked, his voice barely audible. "Currently?" A familiar voice answered from the shadows. 47 operational, 16 in training, and approximately 200 retired but available for recall. The woman who stepped into the light was in her 70s but moved with the fluid grace of someone who'd never stopped training. Her face was Ashley's face, aged but unmistakable. Sarah Rivera, the original Ghost 7, stood before her granddaughter for the first time. Hello, Ashley, Sarah said softly. I've been watching you since the day you were born. I'm sorry for the deception, but it was necessary. Necessary? Ashley's voice cracked with emotion. You let us believe you were dead. You let my mother grow up without her mother. You let me. I let you become exactly what you needed to be, Sarah interrupted. Strong, independent, and most importantly, untraceable to this organization until the right moment. She gestured to the screens around them. Project Lazarus is real, Ashley, but it's not what you've been told. We're not kidnapping soldiers or faking deaths for some shadow government conspiracy. We're protecting humanity from something much worse. Sarah led them to a secured vault door that required biometric scans from 3 different people to open. Inside was a room filled with files, artifacts, and technology that looked simultaneously ancient and advanced. In 1969, during a classified operation in Cambodia, my unit encountered something, Sarah began, pulling out a metal cylinder covered in symbols that hurt to look at directly. We thought it was Soviet technology at first. We were wrong. The cylinder projected a hologram when Sarah touched it, a star map showing Earth and several marked locations across the galaxy. They have been watching us, Sarah continued, testing our military capabilities through proxy conflicts, pushing our development, preparing us for something. Every major conflict since World War II has been influenced by their hand. Subtle pushes to advance our combat technology and identify our best warriors. They? Blake asked, though his tone suggested he already feared the answer. We don't have a name for them, Sarah replied. We just know they're coming. The mathematical certainty is 97% probability of first contact within the next 18 months. Ashley stared at the star map, her mind struggling to process the implications. So, ghost units are Earth's first line of defense, Sarah confirmed. Every supposedly dead operator, every classified unit, every black site, it's all preparation for a war that hasn't started yet. We fake deaths to remove our best warriors from conventional tracking systems, making them invisible to enemy surveillance. General Hayes pulled up a global map on the main screen. Red dots appeared across every continent. These are confirmed landing sites from the past 70 years. Small scout teams, always eliminated by ghost units before public discovery. But the frequency is increasing. 3 years ago, we intercepted communications suggesting a major reconnaissance force was coming. Mosul, Ashley breathed, understanding flooding through her. Ghost Unit 7's mission in Mosul wasn't about saving Marines. The Marines were real, and they were saved, Sarah assured her. But the true mission was eliminating an advanced infiltration team that had embedded with enemy forces. Your unit succeeded, but the energy signature from their elimination technology was detected. The infiltrators knew we'd identified them. So they hunted us, Ashley said, pieces falling into place. They captured Ghost 1 through 6 to study our capabilities. Except we wanted to be captured, Marcus Williams's voice came from behind them. He stood in the doorway with the rest of Ghost Unit 7, all of them looking remarkably recovered for men who'd been tortured for 3 years. The Mongolia facility wasn't a prison. It was a research station. They were studying us, yes, but we were studying them right back. David Chen held up a datapad, 3 years of biometric data on their operatives. Behavioral patterns, technological signatures, biological samples. We learned how to identify them even when they're wearing human faces. Human faces? Blake's face paled. They're shapeshifters of sorts, James Patterson, Ghost 3, explained. Not like movies. They can't just transform at will, but they can grow synthetic biological suits that are indistinguishable from human bodies. We estimate at least 300 are currently embedded in various military and government positions worldwide. Ashley felt the floor shifting beneath her feet, metaphorically and literally, as the facility went to emergency lighting. Alarms began blaring. What's happening? Blake demanded. Sarah moved to the command console with surprising speed. They know. Extracting Ghost Unit 7 from Mongolia triggered a dead man switch. They know. We know. The main screen lit up with hundreds of alerts from around the globe. Military installations reporting unusual activity. Satellite feeds showing objects entering Earth's atmosphere. Communications arrays detecting signals on frequencies that shouldn't exist. Timeline just accelerated, Sarah said grimly. We estimated 18 months. We have maybe 18 hours. Before what? Ashley asked, though she already knew. Before they stop pretending to be human. The next 6 hours transformed Dover Air Force Base into humanity's first interstellar war command center. Ghost units from around the world began checking in, their locations revealed as a massive network of warriors everyone thought were dead. Ashley stood at the tactical command station, watching as her grandmother coordinated a global response with the efficiency of someone who'd been preparing for this moment for 50 years. Ghost 14 reporting from London. 3 confirmed infiltrators in Parliament, awaiting orders. Ghost 23 standing by in Moscow. Russian military command compromised at highest levels. Ghost 9 has eyes on Beijing installation, counting minimum 40 non-human signatures. Blake Thompson had been assigned to Ashley as permanent security, but he seemed more like a student trying to comprehend a lesson that kept expanding beyond imagination. How did no one notice? How did this stay secret for 50 years? Because the people who knew kept dying, Sarah replied without looking away from her screens. Or rather, they kept being reported as dead. Every soldier who encountered evidence was given a choice: join ghost units or have their memories chemically wiped. Most chose to join. But the families, Blake protested, the funerals, the grief. Necessary sacrifices, Marcus interrupted. My wife believes I died in Mosul. My children visit my grave every year. It's the hardest part of this duty, but the alternative is mass panic and an enemy that knows we're aware of them. Ashley was studying the infiltration patterns on a holographic display when something caught her attention. Grandmother, these landing sites, they're not random. They form a pattern. Sarah moved beside her, and for a moment, 3 generations of Rivera women stood together, though technically one was supposed to be dead. You see it too. They're building something. A network, Ashley realized. Each site is equidistant from the others, forming a grid, but for what? Before Sarah could answer, every screen in the facility went dark. Then, a single message appeared in languages that hurt to read, symbols that seemed to shift and change, even while being observed. The masquerade ends, the harvest begins. Your warriors have been cataloged. Thank you for gathering them. No, Sarah whispered, her face draining of color. No, no, no. What? Ashley demanded. What's happening? We didn't outsmart them. Sarah's voice was hollow. They wanted us to create ghost units. They wanted us to gather our best warriors, fake their deaths, put them all in one classified network. The screens came back online, but now they showed ghost unit positions worldwide, except the dots representing operators were disappearing one by one. Ghost 14 has gone dark, lost contact with Ghost 23. Ghost 9 is not responding. Within minutes, half of the global ghost unit network had vanished. They're taking them, David Chen said, his fingers flying over his keyboard. Teleportation signatures at every location. They're harvesting our best warriors. Ashley grabbed her tactical gear. We need to... To what? Sarah asked bitterly. Don't you see? This was their plan all along. Let us think we were preparing to fight them while they were cataloging our finest soldiers. Every ghost unit member has been tagged, tracked, and now collected. Why haven't they taken us? Blake asked. Sarah pulled up a schematic of the facility. Electromagnetic interference from the vault. The same technology that protects their artifacts from detection protects us from teleportation. But the moment we leave, we become targets, Ashley finished. The main screen flickered again. This time, a figure appeared, humanoid but wrong, features that shifted subtly, eyes that contained too much intelligence and not enough humanity. Greetings, ghost units of Earth, it said in perfect English that somehow sounded like every language simultaneously. Your warriors have served their purpose. For 70 of your years, we have pushed your species to develop fighters of exceptional capability. Today, we collect our investment. Investment? Ashley stepped toward the screen. We're not your property. The figure's attention turned to her, and she felt its gaze like ice in her veins. Ashley Rivera, Ghost 7, granddaughter of Ghost 7 Prime. 3 generations of exceptional warriors from one bloodline. You are particularly valuable. If you want me, come and get me, Ashley challenged. What might have been a smile crossed the entity's shifting features. We already have you. You just don't know it yet. The transmission ended, leaving them in silence broken only by continued reports of ghost units vanishing worldwide. What did it mean? Blake asked. We already have you? Sarah was staring at Ashley with an expression of dawning horror. The mission to Mongolia, it was too easy. They let you rescue Ghost Unit 7. But why? Ashley demanded. Marcus Williams answered, his voice grim. Because we were infected. 3 years in their facility, they did something to us. We're carriers now. David Chen was scanning his own biometrics. Nanoscale technology in our bloodstream, dormant until activated. It spread to everyone we've had contact with since the rescue. Ashley felt her blood run cold. Every person at Fort Bragg, everyone on the rescue mission, Blake, herself, they were all infected with alien technology. Can we remove it? Blake asked. Unknown, David replied. But attempting to might trigger it. Sarah moved to an old terminal, one that predated modern systems by decades. She began typing commands that pulled up files from the original Ghost Unit operations. There's something else, she said quietly. Something I've kept hidden even from Lazarus Command. She pulled up a photograph from 1971. It showed her Ghost Unit standing with what appeared to be another entity, similar to the one they'd just seen, but somehow different. Its features more stable, almost benevolent. Not all of them want to harvest us, Sarah revealed. 50 years ago, one of them defected. It warned us about the others, helped us prepare. It's been hiding on Earth ever since, teaching selected Ghost Units how to resist their technology. Where is it now? Ashley asked. Sarah smiled sadly. You've already met him. General Connor Hayes isn't entirely human. He's a hybrid, part of a breeding program to create beings who could resist both species' control. Ashley's mind reeled. The general who had supported her at Fort Bragg, who had authorized the rescue mission, who had brought them here, he wasn't human? There are 17 hybrids in military command positions, Sarah continued. They've been protecting us, guiding Ghost Unit development, preparing us for this day. But if half our Ghost Units have been taken, Blake began. Then we activate Protocol Omega, Sarah interrupted. She moved to a sealed case that required DNA verification to open. Inside was a single red phone, technology from the Cold War era. She dialed a number that shouldn't exist. This is Ghost Prime. Authorization Zulu 77 Alpha. The harvest has begun. Activate all dormant units. Across the world, in graveyards from Arlington to small-town cemeteries, something impossible began happening. Graves marked with the deaths of soldiers from every conflict since Vietnam began showing electromagnetic signatures. Hidden bunkers beneath memorials activated. Warriors who had been in stasis, not dead but sleeping, began to wake. How many? Ashley asked. 3,000, Sarah replied. 3,000 ghost operatives we've kept in cryogenic suspension, waiting for this day, our real army. But even as hope flickered, the screens showed more disturbing images. Major cities worldwide reporting mass disappearances. Not just Ghost Units now, civilians with specific genetic markers, scientists, engineers, children with unusual capabilities. The harvest is expanding, Marcus observed. They're taking anyone who meets their criteria. Ashley's phone, the encrypted one that had started this journey, suddenly buzzed with an incoming message. The sender was listed as Ghost 00. That's impossible, Sarah said. There is no Ghost 00. Ashley opened the message. It contained a single set of coordinates and 5 words. Your parents are still alive. The facility shook as something massive passed overhead. Through the reinforced ceiling, they could hear the sound of metal tearing and concrete crumbling. Dover Air Force Base was under attack. They're coming for us, Blake said, checking his weapons. No, Ashley said, understanding flooding through her. They're hurting us. Everything that's happened, the confrontation at Fort Bragg, the Mongolia rescue, this revelation, it's all been orchestrated to get us here, in this facility, with this technology. She pointed to the alien artifacts around them. They want us to use these. They want us to activate our dormant army, because when we do, we'll create a signal they can trace to every hidden Ghost Unit on the planet, Sarah finished, including the 3,000 in stasis. They were trapped. Activate the dormant army and reveal their locations for harvest. Don't activate them and face the invasion with depleted forces. Either way, humanity lost. Unless... Ashley looked at the alien cylinder her grandmother had shown them, the one with the star map. She touched it, and instead of a projection, she heard a voice in her mind. Not the cold intelligence of the harvesters, but something different. Ashley Rivera, the voice said, I am the one your grandmother calls the defector. I have waited 50 years for one of the bloodline to be ready. You are the bridge between species, the key to stopping the harvest. but the price will be everything you think you know about humanity." "What price?" Ashley asked aloud, causing everyone to stare at her. The voice continued, now audible to everyone. "Humanity was never alone. You are not the first species we have harvested, but you are the first to resist effectively. This is not an invasion, Ashley Rivera. This is a test. Pass, and Earth joins the galactic community. Fail, and your species becomes another resource." "How do we pass?" Ashley demanded. "By doing what ghost units do best," the voice replied. "The impossible." The facility shook again. Through the monitors, they could see massive ships descending through Earth's atmosphere. Not one or two, but hundreds. The invasion had begun in earnest. Sarah grabbed Ashley's shoulders. "Whatever you're thinking, we don't have much time." Ashley looked around the room at Ghost Unit 7, at Blake, who had transformed from bully to brother, at her grandmother, who had sacrificed 50 years of life for this moment. She thought about the thousands of ghost operatives vanishing around the world, the dormant army waiting to wake, the hybrid generals preparing for a war between worlds. "We're going to let them win," Ashley announced. Everyone stared at her in shock. "Captain, that's," Blake began. "The only way to get inside their ships," Ashley finished. "They want to harvest ghost units? Fine, we'll give them ghost units, but not as prisoners, as a Trojan horse." She turned to the alien cylinder. "You said I'm the bridge between species. I want to make a deal." The temperature in the room dropped, as reality itself seemed to bend. The defector materialized, not fully, but as a shifting presence that hurt to perceive directly. "Speak your terms, Ghost 7. "A trade. The voluntary surrender of all ghost units in exchange for one thing, the chance to prove humanity deserves freedom through single combat. Their champion against ours. They will never agree to such terms," the defector said. Ashley smiled, the same expression she'd worn just before taking down Blake in the canteen. "They will if they think they've already won. Let them harvest every ghost unit, including us. Once we're on their ships, we'll have access to their systems. 3,000 dormant warriors suddenly awakening inside their fleet. 7 current ghost units with intimate knowledge of their technology from 3 years of captivity. And one grandmother who's been playing this game longer than anyone." "You're betting humanity's freedom on a prison break?" Blake asked. "No," Ashley replied. "I'm betting it on the one thing they don't understand about humans. We're at our most dangerous when we appear defeated. Every ghost unit knows this. We train for it. We live it. And now we're going to use it to save our species." Sarah laughed, a sound that held 50 years of preparation. "My granddaughter, proposing to weaponize surrender itself. The Rivera women always did think unconventionally. All ghost units, all frequencies," Ashley broadcasted into the encrypted network. "This is Ghost 7. Stand down. Do not resist harvest. Repeat, do not resist. We're going to war, but first, we're going to let them think they've won." Across the world, the remaining ghost units stopped fighting. They stood in the open, weapons lowered, as teleportation beams began taking them one by one. "You realize," the defector said, "if you fail, there is no second chance." "Then we won't fail," Ashley said simply. She looked at her team, her family, her unlikely allies. Ghost units were created to do the impossible. Saving humanity from inside an alien fleet? That's just Tuesday for us. The harvest beam penetrated the facility's defenses. As the light engulfed them, Ashley heard her grandmother whisper, "The real war begins now." Then they were gone, teleported aboard ships that had traveled between stars, carrying with them humanity's most desperate gambit, the transformation of defeat into victory, prisoners into conquerors, and ghosts into the salvation of an entire world. But in the empty facility, one screen remained active. On it, a message appeared in Ashley's handwriting, though she hadn't left it. "Phase 1 complete. The ghost units are in position. Phase 2 begins when Earth's children remember they are all warriors. The harvest was never about taking our best. It was about showing the rest what they're capable of becoming. Every human has ghost potential. Time to wake them all up. Ghost 7 Prime, writing from tomorrow." The message deleted itself, leaving only questions. How could Ashley write from tomorrow? What was Phase 2? And if the harvest was never the real threat, what was coming that required every human to become a ghost? The story that began with a shove in a canteen had become something beyond imagination. A tale of sacrifice, deception, and the possibility that humanity's greatest victory would come from its apparent defeat. The ghosts were gone, harvested as planned. But ghosts, by definition, always come back. And when they did, they would bring with them the truth about humanity's destiny among the stars, a destiny that required not just warriors, but an entire species willing to evolve beyond everything they thought possible. The real question was not whether humanity would survive, but what it would become in the process of surviving. And Ashley Rivera, Ghost 7, granddaughter of the original Ghost, was about to find out that some transformations could only happen when you voluntarily walk into the enemy's hands, carrying with you the seeds of their destruction and humanity's transcendence. The harvest had begun, but so had humanity's greatest counterattack. The ghosts were coming home, all of them, from yesterday, today, and apparently tomorrow itself.